Chapter 1. The Point of No Return. There's a moment when you realize there's no going back. Not because you're lost. Not because something went wrong. Simply because you took a step, and that step changed everything. For me, that moment came on the morning of September 14th. I was standing on the bank of the Ket River, a tributary of the Ob, somewhere in the Tomsk region of western Siberia, watching Uncle Kolya's motorboat disappear around a bend. He turned around exactly once, raised his hand, and was gone. The silence hit me instantly. Not the kind of city silence you get when you turn off the television. Real silence. Living silence. The taiga breathed around me, in the rustle of aspen leaves, the lap of water, and somewhere far away, the cry of a Siberian jay. I set my backpack down on the ground. 38 kilograms of gear, 5 days of food, fishing rods, a tent. And 10 days ahead of me. Alone. My name is Marina. I'm 34 years old. I live in Novosibirsk. I work as an interior designer, and before this trip, the wildest thing I had ever done was a hiking tour in the Altai Mountains 3 years ago. 12 people, an experienced guide, hot meals every evening. This was something entirely different. The idea had come to me in winter. I was watching videos on YouTube, you probably know the genre. Men going alone into the wilderness. Setting up camp, catching fish, cooking soup right over an open fire, sleeping under the stars. And in every comment section, hundreds of people write, I want to do that. I wrote the same thing. And then I thought, well, why not? Why not? Women don't fish? That's not true, they do. Women don't survive alone in the wild? Also not true. It's just talked about less. Filmed less. And I got curious, what is it actually like? Not in the theory of YouTube videos, but like this. You, the taiga, and a river. I spent 6 months preparing. Read books on wilderness survival. Took fishing lessons, yes, literally, I found an instructor. Studied maps. Consulted with wildlife rangers. Talked to locals. And finally, here I was. On the bank of the Ket River. Alone. Uncle Kolya's boat had long since vanished. I took a deep breath. The air smelled of wet moss, pine, and something river-like, cool and faintly of silt. I will never forget that smell. Well then, I said aloud. Let's begin. Chapter 2. The first camp. I had chosen my campsite in advance using satellite images. A small rise about 100 meters from the water, so I wouldn't be flooded if the river level came up. Sparse pine forest, less undergrowth, fewer mosquitoes. And most importantly, a flat clearing for the tent. On the map, it looked perfect. In reality, I spent 30 minutes fighting through willow thickets along the bank, sank up to my knee in a bog, and when I finally reached my flat clearing, I found it overgrown with waist-high ferns and littered with fallen birch trees. First lesson of the taiga, maps lie. No matter. I set the backpack down, took out my knife, and started clearing. 40 minutes of work, and the site was ready. The tent went up in 20 minutes. I had practiced at home, in my living room, timing myself. While pitching the tent, I took stock of my surroundings. The place turned out to be beautiful, better than it looked on the satellite. The river curved here, forming a small cove with still water. On the opposite bank stood ancient cedar trees. The sky was gray, autumn, but that gave the landscape a particular, severe beauty. Next priority, firewood. I walked a couple 100 meters around the camp and found 3 standing deadwood trees. Their wood burns well. I snapped off branches, found birch bark, it catches fire even when damp. Piled everything by the camp. I lit the fire on my 3rd attempt. The first 2, the match blew out in the wind. Then I thought to shield the flame with my body, hold the birch bark up close, and there it was, a small flame beginning to grow. There's something primal about watching a fire you built yourself. Not a gas stove, not a grill lighter, a real campfire. You look at it and think, I did this. I made fire. I set a pot of water to boil. River water must always be boiled. While it heated, I unpacked the rucksack, arranged things in the tent. Found a spot for the fishing rods. Checked the first aid kit. Charged the GPS navigator. The first dinner was simple, buckwheat porridge with tinned meat. I had brought freeze-dried food in cans for the first 2 days, planning to switch to fish after that. That was the plan. Fish would be my food source. While eating, a thought crossed my mind, what if there is no fish? The thought flickered and disappeared. There will be. A river like this, it's not a city pond. Out here in the Siberian taiga, where there are almost no people, there has to be fish. The sun was setting, though behind the clouds you could hardly see it. The light simply faded, and the taiga grew dark. I climbed into the tent, pulled the sleeping bag over me. It wasn't cold, maybe 8 degrees Celsius. Quite manageable. Outside, the river murmured. Wind stirred somewhere high in the treetops. And also, something rustled in the bushes about 30 meters away. I froze. Listened. The rustling stopped. Then started again. Then stopped. Some animal. Maybe a moose. Maybe a wild boar. Maybe just wind on a fallen branch. I told myself, probably the wind, and fell asleep before I could finish the sentence. Chapter 3. The First Catch. The second morning began at 5:30, not because I had set an alarm, but because the Siberian jays made such a racket that ignoring them was impossible. I climbed out of the tent. Cold, my breath came out in a cloud. Dew on the grass. Fog over the river, thick, milky, so thick the opposite bank was invisible. Impossibly beautiful. First things first, fire, tea. Can't do anything without that. While the water came to a boil, I assembled the fishing rod. I had brought a spinning rod and a float rig. Starting with the float. A worm on the hook. I had dug the worms the evening before, found them under a rotting log, where they always are. I walked 100 meters downstream to where the cove opened into a small pool. The water there was dark, almost black, still. A good spot. Cast. The float settled on the water, rocked gently, and went still. I waited. People often say fishing is meditation. Rest. Peace. For the first 15 minutes I thought, yes, meditation, exactly right. You stand there, watch the float, listen to the forest. Then the thoughts started. What if there are no fish here? What if I chose the wrong spot? Wrong worm? Is it rigged correctly? The float stood motionless. After 20 minutes I moved, walked further downstream, to where a fallen tree lay in the water. Cast there, by the snag. Fish love snags, I knew that much for certain. The float twitched. I tensed. It twitched again. Dipped under. I struck, a sharp upward jerk of the rod. Felt resistance. Real, live weight on the hook. A minute later, a perch was flapping on the bank. Not huge, maybe 300 grams. But alive, real, with bright red fins. I stared at it and smiled. Smiled like an idiot, ear to ear, alone in the taiga. Hello, I said to the perch. It looked back at me with a round eye. I released it, the first one. Just because I wanted to. I didn't release the next one. Or the one after. By 9 in the morning I had 5 perch and a small pike. More than enough for fish soup. The first fish soup in the wild is its own story. I cooked it in a small pot, added an onion I'd brought from home, a little salt. Cleaned the fish myself for the very first time in my life. The instructor had taught me, but there's a difference between being taught and doing it. It came out messy. I cut my finger several times. The innards, well, let's not go into that. But the soup was extraordinary. I sat by the fire with a hot bowl and thought, this is real food. Food you caught yourself. That makes the simplest meal into something greater. Not just food and achievement. Chapter 4. The Taiga Speaks. The third day began with rain. Fine, persistent, Siberian autumn rain, the kind that doesn't look like much but soaks you through in an hour. I sat in my tent drinking tea and watched the drops drum against the fly. Fishing in that kind of rain is a questionable pleasure. But on the other hand, nothing else to do. I pulled on my rain jacket and headed to the river. Here's an interesting thing, fish behave differently in the rain. Overcast sky, different pressure, insects get knocked down to the water surface, the fish are more active. At least, that's what my instructor had said. And, wonder of wonders, he was right. That morning I caught more fish than on any other day of the entire trip. A pike just over a kilogram. 3 perch bigger than yesterday's. And, unexpectedly, an eyed. A beautiful fish, silver with a golden sheen. I stood in the rain, soaked to the skin, holding the fish in my hands, and I felt good. Genuinely good, the kind of good you almost never feel in the city. Because you're not thinking about any problems. You're simply here. Now. Rain, river, fish. By midday the rain had stopped. The sun came out, surprisingly bright for September. I hung my things to dry, caught more fish, and decided to explore the area a little. I walked into the forest. Not far, about 300 meters from camp, along clear landmarks so I wouldn't get lost. And here the forest had a surprise waiting for me. Mushrooms. An enormous number of mushrooms. Birch boletes, aspen boletes, firm, young, not wormy. Slippery jacks in entire meadows. And off to the side, several porcini. Real porcini mushrooms, stocky, with thick stems. I gathered them in the hem of my rain jacket and thought, here it is, the real treasure. Nature gives, if you know how to look. That evening, fish soup with mushrooms. I have never eaten anything like it. But that wasn't what I remember most about that day. In the evening, when it grew dark and I was sitting by the fire, the taiga began to speak. Not metaphorically, literally. Sounds I couldn't explain. Something large was splashing in the river. An owl hooted, very close, maybe 20 meters from camp. And then, this one frightened me, from somewhere far off came a low, guttural sound. Not a howl, not a roar. Something in between. A bear? I knew there were bears in the area. Uncle Kolya had warned me. Bears are here, but in autumn they're busy, eating to fatten up for winter. They won't bother you if you don't bother them. I had brought a flare, a signal rocket, and a knife. That should be enough. But when you hear that sound in the darkness, theory and practice tend to part ways. I didn't run to the tent. I did the opposite, I threw more wood on the fire, so the flame climbed higher. Bears don't like fire. I sat upright. Listened. The sound didn't come again. Then I sat by the fire for a long time, didn't want to go inside. Watched the flames, listened to the river, and thought strange thoughts. About how small a person is against all of this. About how the taiga was here millions of years before me and will be here after. About how everything I consider important, deadlines, bills, other people's opinions, means absolutely nothing here. Here, different things matter. Fire. Water. Food. Warmth. Everything else is surplus. Chapter 5. The hard day. The fourth day brought the hardest challenge. I woke up with pain in my leg. Right ankle, I must have twisted it the day before scrambling along the bank in the rain, and didn't notice at the time. By morning it had swollen. Not badly, but noticeably. I did everything by the book, wrapped it with an elastic bandage, took an anti-inflammatory. Felt around it, didn't seem broken, just a sprain. Walking was possible, but carefully. On a day like this, you want to quit. I'm being honest. I sat by the fire, leg propped on a log, and thought, what a great YouTube story this would make. Woman goes alone into the taiga, sprains her ankle on day 3 and calls for rescue. How everyone would laugh. But then came another thought, what exactly is stopping me from continuing? My ankle hurts, but I can sit. I can fish, the bank here is level, no need to walk far. I can cook. I can gather firewood, there's plenty nearby. What changes if I call for evacuation? They come, they take me back. No fish, no forest, no sky. Back to Novosibirsk, and then what? Watch YouTube from the sofa? No. I wrapped a second layer of bandage, stood up carefully. Fine. Manageable. That day I fished from the bank without moving. A simple ledger rig, a weight, a hook with a worm, the line running out into the water, and just waited. Lay on the bank, looked up at the sky. The sky that day was extraordinary. White-gray clouds raced past, and through the gaps, occasional blue. I counted birds, small flocks passing overhead, heading south for winter. Ducks, maybe. Or geese, too far away to tell. The rod jerked hard, struck, set the hook. Something heavy. Not a pike, heavier. I pulled carefully, my ankle not allowing me to stand and step back for leverage. Pulled lying down, bracing my elbow on the ground. A bream came out. Large, probably 1.5 kilograms. Wide, flat, blunt-nosed. A beauty. I looked at it and laughed, from surprise, from joy, from the fact that I had managed it anyway. Lying flat, bad ankle, alone in the wilderness, I had caught a bream. By evening the ankle barely hurt at all. Or maybe I had just stopped noticing. That night I recorded my first voice note. I had brought a small voice recorder, I planned to keep an audio diary. The first 3 days there was no time for it, but now, I wanted to. Day 4. Sprained my ankle. Lay around all day. Caught a bream. Ate fried bream with mushrooms. The sky was beautiful. At night, -2, I think. Stars visible through gaps in the clouds. Thought about the city, the office, why any of it matters. Here, only what is here matters. Maybe this is what it means to be alive. Chapter 6. The river as teacher. Day 5, ankle better, walking normally again. I decided to explore the river upstream. Walked about 3 kilometers along the bank. This is when I began to understand the river. In the city, we tend to think of water as a uniform space. Sea, lake, river, water is water. But when you spend several days with a river, you start to see its character. It has a character, every river has its own. The Ket is slow. It's a Siberian river, flat country, no rapids. It flows calmly, unhurried. Brown from the peat bogs it drains. Very quiet. And very alive. I walked and watched the water. Learning to read it. Where the current picks up slightly, ripples on the surface. Where it slows, water smooth as a mirror. Around fallen trees, whirlpools, slow and contemplative. Riffles, very small ones, but you hear them, the water speaks differently over them. Fish hold in specific places. Not everywhere. You have to learn this. Pike are ambush predators. They hide by snags, by grass beds, right at the bank in the shadows. Perch like deep holes below the riffles, where fast current transitions to slow. Bream and I'd stay in pools and still stretches. Burbot, cold water lovers, they lie under rocky banks. This knowledge didn't come only from books, books gave me the foundation, of course, but it only became my own out here, standing on the bank and actually seeing all of it. On the 5th day I found what I later called my spot. A small backwater behind a jutting section of bank, the water there was almost still, but a deep channel from the river flowed into it. Sandy bottom, visible through the clear water. And fish. I could see their shadows, several large silhouettes holding near the bottom. I lowered the float rig. Slowly, no sudden movements. Baited with a piece of bread, fish in quiet backwaters have different tastes, not worm. I waited a long time. Sat on a log without moving. The taiga around me lived its own life, rustling, clicking, splashing. I was part of it. The float moved sideways slowly, then dipped. And eyed. Large, over a kilogram easily. The fight lasted 5 minutes, it circled, ran under the bank, then changed direction sharply. I held the rod with both hands. When it came into the shallows and I took it by hand, I felt its heart beating. Small, rapid. Alive. I held it and thought about the fact that I was going to kill it. Eat it. And that this is natural. This is part of the natural cycle. This is more honest than buying fish at a supermarket, where you never stop to think about what that required. I carried the hide back to camp. Grilled it on sticks over the fire, just like that, with salt, skin and all. Ate it with my hands. It was delicious beyond any words I have. Chapter 7. Night Fishing. Day 6. I decided to try night fishing. There's plenty of fish during the day, that's a fact. But night fishing is different. At night, burbot come out. A predatory fish, cold water. It bites at night, especially in autumn. Uncle Kolya had said, burbot in autumn is the best eating. Fat, tender. If you catch one, you won't regret it. I set ledger rigs in the evening. 3 of them, in different spots. By a snag, toward the opposite bank, I just barely managed to cast that far, and in my backwater. Bait, worms and pieces of fresh fish, burbot love fish. It got dark early, autumn. By 8 in the evening, total darkness. I sat by the fire with my headlamp and waited. Night in the taiga is something entirely different from day. By day everything is familiar, understandable. At night, different. The darkness is thick. The sounds are different. A splash in the river, loud, unexpected. A crack of a branch. And somewhere, a distant howl. Definitely wolves. Uncle Kolya had said there were wolves in these parts, but they don't approach fire. I watched the ledger rigs by the tension of the lines, had tied a small bell to each one. An old method. Reliable. At around 10 o'clock the first bell rang. I ran over. Pulled, heavy. Very heavy. I pulled steadily, picking up the line meter by meter. Finally, a burbot came thrashing on the bank. An ugly fish. Slippery as an eel. Big head, round. But, 1.5 kilograms, a big one. The second bell rang half an hour later. A smaller burbot. I sat by the fire until midnight. Caught 3 burbot. No more bites after that. I fried the burbot that night, right there by the fire. Uncle Kolya was right, tender, rich meat. Burbot liver is a delicacy in itself, large and almost without bitterness. I ate under the stars. The sky that night had finally cleared, and there were so many stars I couldn't believe my eyes. In the city I had never seen so many stars. The Milky Way. A white band across half the sky. Several satellites passed overhead, slow, glowing points. I sat there and thought, all of this was always here. All of this exists. We've just stopped looking. We live in cities, under streetlights, in the noise, and we forget that this sky exists. That this silence exists. Why hadn't I lived like this before? That night I made my second diary recording. Long, rambling, probably not very coherent to an outside listener. About how you change when you're truly alone. How all the layers fall away, the one you were talking to colleagues. The one for your parents. The one for your friends. And what's left is something real. Not always pretty. But real. Chapter 8. The Unexpected. Day 7 brought an unpleasant surprise. In the morning, checking my gear, I found that one of my rods, my favorite spinning rod, was broken. Snapped in half. Probably I had set it down carelessly when I came back in the dark last night. Or a moose had stepped on it, there were fresh tracks nearby. Either way, the spinning rod was gone. That meant no more pike fishing with a lure. Only the float rig and the ledger rigs remained. Fewer options. I sat with it. Felt annoyed. Then thought, what exactly do I lose, honestly? There's fish. Perch, bream, I'd bite on a float. Burbot on the ledger. I'll survive. Then, another problem. Firewood was running low. Not that firewood could ever really run out in the taiga, forest everywhere. But the drywood near camp had been depleted. I needed to either go deeper into the forest or find another solution. I went into the forest. Found several more fallen dry birches. Sawing them with a handsaw. Slow and exhausting. I hadn't brought an axe, it had seemed heavy. Now I regretted it. I dragged logs back to camp, broke by hand what could be broken, sawed what couldn't. 2 hours of work. Hands blistered. Back aching. But, enough firewood for 3 days ahead. After lunch, more rain. Short but heavy. I retreated to the tent and pulled out my book. I had brought one, deliberately. Natalia Trauberg, The Invisibles. I'd read it years ago, a favorite. In the taiga it reads differently. Each page feels weightier somehow. By evening it had cleared. I stepped outside and saw a rainbow over the river. A double one, rare. Vivid, stretching from bank to bank. I stood and looked at it. Just stood and looked. Did nothing else. Didn't photograph it, I had intentionally left my phone at home. No signal out here, no point in bringing it. I just looked. That moment, it will stay with me for the rest of my life. A double rainbow over the Ket River. Silence. The smell of wet pine. And the feeling of being so small, and so happy because of it. That night there was no anxiety at all. I fell asleep immediately, as if someone had switched me off. Chapter 9. Talking to the River. Day 8. The second to last. I was up early, before dawn. I don't know why, I just opened my eyes at 4 in the morning and there was no sleep left in me. I came out of the tent. Dark. Starry sky. Frost, the first real one, maybe 3 degrees below zero. The grass was hoarfrost, crunching underfoot. I built the fire, put the kettle on. Sat by the flames and listened to the taiga waking up. First, total silence. Then, around 6, the first birds. One, then another. Building. By 7, a whole chorus, jays, tits, a woodpecker somewhere far off. And most remarkable, the fog beginning to rise over the river. River fog at dawn is something special. First, separate wisps, white ghosts above the water. Then it grows, thickens. For a few minutes the river disappears entirely, only a white cloud where it should be. Then the first ray of sunlight. Pink, oblique. The fog begins to burn from within. Gold, then rose, then orange. I sat by the fire and watched. In moments like this, you understand why artists paint nature. Why poets write. Because you cannot not capture this. Because it's unjust. That such beauty exists and doesn't stay. The fog lifts, the dawn ends. It stays only inside you. I went to the river. Took a rod, cast. And didn't think about fish. Just stood on the bank and talked to the river. That sounds strange, I know. But it's true. I spoke aloud. About how I'd be leaving soon. About how I'd miss this water, this sky, this silence. About things I hadn't understood before and understood now. About wanting to come back. The river flows and flows. Slow, dark, ancient. It's been here for millions of years. It saw mammoths on these banks. Saw the first people who came here with nets. Saw merchants, explorers, exiles. And now it sees me. A woman from Novosibirsk with a fishing rod and a broken spinning reel. The float dipped. And eyed. Small, maybe 200 grams. I looked at it and let it go. I had let the first one go too. Let it swim. I spent the rest of the day quietly. Cooked, tidied the camp. Checked through the gear. What was in good shape, what wasn't. Wrote a list of things to bring next time. An axe, definitely an axe. A spare rod. More salt. Pepper. Garlic, fish with garlic is just. In the evening I sat by the fire for a long time. Didn't want the day to end. Chapter 10. The last night. Day 9, the final full day. Tomorrow morning Uncle Kolya would come. It rained all day. Steady, unrelenting. I fished in the rain, routine by now. Caught several perch and a large silver bream. Made soup, not fish broth this time, actual soup, with grain, with onion, with a piece of cured pork fat from my supplies. After lunch I started packing. Slowly. Carefully. I had been careful with this camp. Left no rubbish, cut no living trees, hadn't disturbed the bird's nest I'd found in the bushes. The place where I had spent 10 days should remain clean. That's respect, for the river, for the forest, for whoever comes after. In the evening, the last fire. I threw on extra wood, let it burn bright. Took out the voice recorder and made the final entry. Last night. The rain stopped, stars out. The river is murmuring. Everything is packed. I'm thinking about what has changed over these 10 days. A lot has changed. No, that's wrong. Nothing has changed. Everything that was there before is still there. I just understand now what matters and what doesn't. What matters, this sky. This fire. The tiredness in your hands after honest work. Fish you caught yourself. The first soup. A double rainbow. An eyed you let go. Burbot in the dark. Fog at dawn. What doesn't matter, everything else. That's a joke. That's not a joke. I'll miss the taiga. It sounds. The way it accepts you, if you're willing to be accepted. The way everything here is real. Tomorrow Uncle Kolya will come and take me back. In 3 days I'll be sitting at my computer making interior renderings. That's fine too. But I'll be different. Slightly different. I've learned that I can do it alone. That I'm not afraid of the taiga at night. That I can light a fire and clean a fish. That I can live without a phone and without the internet. And it's not frightening, it's good. I've also learned that the world is much larger than it appears from an office. And that this is a good thing. Good night, taiga. Chapter 11. Going back. Uncle Kolya arrived exactly at 8. A quiet, reserved Siberian man of about 60. When he saw me on the bank, alive, healthy, with my rucksack and a bag of fish, he nodded without a word. Then said, "So. You're alive. Well done." It was the highest praise he was capable of. I understood that immediately. While we loaded the boat, he looked over the campsite. Glanced at the fire pit, clean, cleared. At the bank, no rubbish. He nodded again. Good camp, he said. Respectful. We pushed off. I sat in the boat and watched my bank receding. The fallen birches I had cleared. The fire pit. The forked pine tree I had used as a landmark. All of it had become so familiar in 10 days. Goodbye, Ket. Catch anything? Uncle Kolya asked, not turning around. A whole bag. Good. What did you get? Perch, pike, eyed, bream. 3 burbot. Silence. Then. How'd you get the burbot? Ledger rig. Night fishing. More silence. Then he turned and looked at me differently. Not the way he'd looked at the city tourist he needed to drop off and then eventually rescue. Like a regular person. Well done, he said again. 2 words. But that was enough. The ride back took about an hour and a half. I watched the banks passing by and thought, this taiga, it's the same everywhere and different everywhere. Every bend brings a new view, new light. You cannot watch this and not think about life. When we reached the village, Uncle Kolya helped carry the gear out. I asked, can I come back? In spring? He gave a short laugh. Come back. Just bring an axe. I laughed. Chapter 12. What remained? Now, writing this, 3 months have passed. I've been sitting at my computer, making renderings, answering emails. Everything as before. But, not quite as before. I bought a spinning rod, a proper one. Joined a fishing club in Novosibirsk. There are people there who go out to the Ob every weekend. I've been several times. It's not the taiga, of course. But it's fishing. On weekends I go to the park, just to sit. Without my phone. Watch the trees, watch the water in the pond. It sounds ridiculous, maybe, a park instead of the taiga. But I need that rhythm. To switch off, even for a little while. I've also started cooking fish at home. Found a decent fishmonger, go there regularly. Pike, perch, burbot turns up sometimes, though rarely. When I clean fish at the kitchen counter, I think of the first time on the bank of the Ket River. Clumsy hands, cut fingers. Now, much faster. I told several friends about the trip. The reactions varied. One said, you're insane, alone in the taiga. Another, I want to do the same. A third, weren't you bored without your phone? No. And that's the strange thing, not for a single moment was I bored. Not 1 minute. Because when you're alone with nature, there's no boredom. There's work, there's observation, there are thoughts. There's what needs to be done right now, firewood, water, fire, fish. Everything is concrete. Everything is real. That's what the city often lacks. The real. The concrete. Things you can touch with your hands, make with your hands, eat. I'm going back in spring. Already arranged it with Uncle Kolya. I'll bring an axe. And maybe I'll bring someone with me, the friend who said I want to do the same. We'll see how she handles it. But for now, this diary. These 10 days on the Ket. I don't know who I'm writing this for. Maybe for myself. Maybe for those who also want to go, but are afraid. Afraid of solitude, of the taiga, of darkness, of bears, of a night without a phone. I'll say this, being afraid is normal. Fear is normal. But fear and impossibility are different things. All you need is to prepare, to learn, to approach where you're going with respect. And take that step. The boat pulls away, and there's no going back. But you won't want to go back.